Captain Marcus Chun was having a perfectly normal Tuesday when everything went wrong. He sat in his captain's chair on the bridge of the U's Harmony, drinking his third cup of coffee and reading reports about asteroid mining operations. His ship was on routine patrol near the neutral zone, the empty space between human territory and the unknown regions of the galaxy. "Captain," his communications officer Sarah called out, her voice tight with worry. "I'm picking up massive energy signatures. Multiple ships approaching fast." Marcus set down his coffee and straightened up. "How many ships, Sarah?" 15. "No, 20. "Captain, there are at least 30 ships out there. They're huge. Bigger than anything in our fleet." The main screen flickered to life, showing space filled with enormous crystalline vessels that seemed to be made of living light. They moved in perfect formation, their surfaces shifting between different colors, like floating rainbows. Marcus had never seen anything like them. "Unknown vessels, this is Captain Marcus Chun of the United Earthship Harmony," he said into his communicator. "Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." The response came immediately, but not through normal radio channels. Instead, the air in front of Marcus began to shimmer and glow. A voice spoke directly into his mind, cold and formal. "Human vessel. You will prepare to receive Her Royal Highness, Princess Veltara of the Zetherian Empire. Your highest royal representative must present themselves immediately for formal diplomatic contact." Marcus blinked in confusion. What now?" The voice continued without pause. "Failure to produce your royal representative will be considered an act of war against the Zetherian Empire. You have one of your time periods called minutes to comply." Wait, Marcus said, standing up from his chair. "We don't have any royal representatives. Humans don't have kings or queens anymore. We have elected officials, but impossible." The voice cut him off. "All civilized species have proper royal hierarchy. You must be attempting deception. This is your final warning." Marcus felt sweat forming on his forehead. Through the main screen, he could see energy building up in the alien ship's weapon systems. His own ship had decent shields and weapons, but against 30 massive alien vessels, the Harmony wouldn't last 5 minutes. "Sir," his tactical officer whispered urgently, "their weapons are charging. Whatever you're going to do, you need to do it now." Marcus made a decision that would change everything. "Unknown aliens. I mean, Your Highness? As the ranking officer of this vessel, I will serve as Earth's representative for this meeting." He wasn't lying, exactly. He was representing Earth in this moment. The fact that he had no royal blood, no fancy title, and had gotten his job through hard work and test scores rather than birthright seemed like details he could explain later. "Acceptable," the voice said. "Prepare your throne room for the princess's arrival. She will materialize in 30 seconds. Our what room?" Marcus muttered, but there was no time to ask questions. "Sarah, clear everyone off the bridge except essential personnel," he ordered quickly. "Tom, make sure our universal translator is working properly. Everyone else, just try to look official." Marcus had barely finished speaking when the air in the center of his bridge began to glow with brilliant white light. The light grew brighter and brighter until everyone had to shield their eyes. When it faded, a figure stood where nothing had been before. Princess Veltara was unlike anything Marcus had ever imagined. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, and appeared to be made of living crystal that shifted between blue and silver. Her form was basically humanoid, but more graceful, more perfect than any human. Light seemed to flow through her like water, and when she moved, she made soft chiming sounds like wind through crystal bells. She wore what looked like a crown made of pure starlight, and robes that seemed to be woven from the aurora itself. Power radiated from her like heat from a fire, making the air itself feel heavy and important. Marcus felt his knees want to buckle just from looking at her. I am Princess Veltara, third reflection of the Crystal Throne, speaker of the Seven Harmonies, guardian of the sacred frequencies, she said in a voice that sounded like a perfect musical chord. I greet you in the name of the Eternal Empire. Marcus swallowed hard. Every instinct told him to bow, to fall to his knees, to show respect to this obviously powerful being. But he was a ship captain, not a courtier. He had no idea what he was supposed to do. Welcome aboard the Yu's Harmony, Your Highness, he managed to say. I'm Captain Marcus Chun. It's an honor to meet you. The princess tilted her head slightly, and Marcus realized he might have just made a terrible mistake. Her crystalline features showed no expression he could read, but somehow he felt her disapproval like a cold wind. You do not perform the greeting of seven depths? She asked. You do not present the traditional gifts of first contact? Your customs are unusual. Marcus looked around helplessly at his crew, who were all staring at the alien princess with wide eyes and open mouths. Your Highness, I'm afraid we're not familiar with your customs. This is our first time meeting your people. Perhaps you could teach us? Another pause. The princess seemed to be studying him like he was an interesting, but possibly dangerous animal. Very well, she said finally. We shall proceed with formal negotiations. Summon your advisors, your military leaders, your wise ones. We have much to discuss regarding the future of your species. Marcus felt a sinking feeling in his stomach. He was about to represent all of humanity in negotiations with what was clearly a powerful alien empire. He had no training for this, no experience with alien customs, and no idea what he was supposed to say. Right, he said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Let's get started. As Princess Veltara began to glow brighter, preparing for what Marcus suspected would be a very long and very complicated conversation. He wondered if this was how first contact was supposed to go. Somehow, he doubted it. The negotiations began 3 hours later in the ship's main conference room, and Marcus quickly realized he was in way over his head. Princess Veltara had insisted on waiting while Marcus gathered his royal court, which turned out to be his senior officers and the ship's diplomatic advisor. Lieutenant Rodriguez. The princess had spent the waiting time standing perfectly still in the center of the bridge, glowing softly and making no sound. She didn't sit, didn't move, didn't even seem to breathe. Marcus had offered her food, water, and a chair, but she had simply stared at him with those crystalline eyes until he gave up trying. Now she sat across from him at the conference table, her form so bright that they'd had to dim the lights. Every word she spoke took forever because of something she called proper formal address protocols. In the name of the eternal crystal throne, under the light of the 7 sacred stars, with the blessing of the harmony that binds all things. Speaking as the third reflection of royal authority, she began, and Marcus already felt his eyes glazing over. I, Princess Veltara, do hereby formally request information regarding your species' territorial claims and military capabilities, for the purpose of determining appropriate diplomatic relations. The universal translator was struggling with concepts that had no human equivalent. Words like honor debt crystal song and the third reflection of morning single quotes first truth kept coming through as untranslatable symbols on the screen. Right, Marcus said when she finally finished. Well, humanity controls about 12 star systems. We have a defensive fleet of about 200 ships, and we're generally peaceful, but we'll defend ourselves if attacked. Princess Veltara's glow flickered, which Marcus was learning meant confusion or displeasure. Your response lacks proper formality, she said. taking another 5 minutes to say it with all the required formal phrases. Also, you have presented no gifts of introduction, performed no ritual acknowledgments, and failed to sing the traditional harmonies of greeting. Marcus looked helplessly at Lieutenant Rodriguez, who was frantically checking her tablet for any information about Zetherian customs. She shook her head and shrugged. "Your Highness," Marcus tried again, "we don't know your customs. Could you perhaps teach us? Or maybe we could use simpler language to understand each other better." The suggestion seemed to physically pain the princess. Her crystalline form dimmed noticeably. "Proper diplomatic protocol cannot be simplified," she said through another endless formal preamble. "To do so would be to dishonor both our species and the sacred nature of first contact." And so went for hours. Every simple question Marcus asked required a 20-minute formal response. Every answer he gave was apparently wrong because it wasn't ceremonial enough. When he tried to shake her hand, she recoiled as if he tried to attack her. When he leaned back in his chair, she accused him of showing deliberate disrespect. His crew was getting exhausted. Rodriguez had been taking notes for 6 hours straight and was starting to look glazed. His communications officer, Sarah, had fallen asleep twice and been woken up by the princess's chiming voice. Even Marcus himself was fighting to stay alert as the alien royal droned through yet another formal requirement. But worse than his crew's exhaustion was watching Princess Veltara herself. Despite all her formal perfection, Marcus could see something like tiredness in the way her glow grew dimmer as the hours passed. She never broke character, never stopped speaking in perfect diplomatic language. But there were moments when she paused just a little too long, or when her perfect posture slipped slightly. She seemed as trapped by all this formal nonsense as they were. "Your species' governmental structure remains unclear," she said after another elaborate formal opening. "The concept of elected leaders does not translate properly. Surely you have royal bloodlines that determine authority." "No," Marcus said, trying to keep frustration out of his voice. "We choose our leaders based on their abilities and what people think of their ideas. Anyone can become a leader if they work hard and people trust them." Princess Veltara was quiet for a long moment. Her crystalline features were impossible to read, but her glow shifted through several different colors before settling back to blue-silver. "This concept is difficult to process," she admitted through the formal language. "In our empire, one station is determined by the purity of their crystal formation and their harmonic resonance with the royal frequency. How do you determine fitness to lead without proper bloodline analysis?" Marcus leaned forward, genuinely interested despite his exhaustion. "We look at what someone has done, how they treat people, whether they keep their promises. Someone born in a palace might make a terrible leader, while someone born in poverty might be brilliant at it." For the first time since the negotiations began, Princess Veltara seemed actually curious rather than just formally polite. But then her training kicked in, and she launched into another formal response about the sacred nature of royal bloodlines. "Your Highness," Marcus interrupted gently, "can I ask you something? Do you actually enjoy all this formal language? Because you seem tired." The princess's glow flared bright red, and Marcus worried he'd just committed some terrible breach of etiquette. But then her color shifted to what looked almost like embarrassment. "Personal comfort is irrelevant to diplomatic duty," she said. Though this time she said it in relatively normal language rather than the elaborate formal version. "But you're a person, not just a diplomat," Marcus said. "Don't you get tired? Don't you want to just have a normal conversation?" Princess Veltara stared at him for a long moment. Several different colors flickered through her crystalline form, and Marcus could almost see some kind of internal struggle happening. "The negotiations will continue tomorrow," she said finally. "This session has lasted long enough for proper rest periods. Tomorrow? Rodriguez squeaked. How long are these negotiations supposed to take? Proper first contact negotiations require several rotations to complete, the princess replied. In your time measurements, approximately 21 days. Marcus felt his heart sink. 3 weeks of this formal torture would drive them all insane. There had to be a better way. Your Highness, he said as she began to glow brighter, preparing to teleport away. Where will you be resting tonight? I will maintain position aboard your vessel for the duration of negotiations, she replied. I require no sustenance or rest facilities. As Princess Veltara disappeared in another flash of light, Marcus slumped back in his chair. Around him, his exhausted crew began gathering their notes and tablets. Captain, Rodriguez said quietly, I don't think we can do 3 weeks of this. Marcus nodded grimly. I know. We need to find a way to break through all this formal language and just talk to her like a real person. But sir, Sarah pointed out, she's an alien princess. What if treating her casually offends her even more? Marcus thought about the moments when Princess Veltara's perfect formal mask had slipped slightly, when she'd seemed curious about human customs or tired from all the ceremony. Maybe, he said slowly, the risk is worth taking, because I don't think she's enjoying this any more than we are. Marcus couldn't sleep that night. He kept thinking about Princess Veltara standing alone somewhere on his ship, glowing softly in the dark, probably running through formal diplomatic procedures in her head. The whole situation felt wrong to him. Here was a person, alien or not, trapped in layers of ceremony that seemed to make everyone miserable. At 3 a.m, he gave up trying to sleep and went to the ship's observation deck to think. It was his favorite spot when he needed to clear his head, with huge windows that showed the stars and the vast emptiness of space. He wasn't surprised to find someone already there. Princess Veltara stood at the far end of the observation deck, her crystalline form dimmed to barely more than a gentle blue glow. She was perfectly still, staring out at the stars through the transparent aluminum windows. For the first time since she'd appeared on his bridge, she looked peaceful. Marcus hesitated at the entrance. Should he leave her alone? Try to start another formal conversation? He didn't want to interrupt what seemed like her only break from all the diplomatic ceremony. But as he watched, he noticed something that made his chest tighten with sympathy. Her glow was dimming even further, and her perfect posture was beginning to slump. She looked exhausted in a way that went beyond just being tired. She looked lonely. Marcus made a decision that would change everything. He walked to the small kitchenette in the corner of the observation deck and made 2 cups of coffee. Not the fancy diplomatic refreshments that protocol probably demanded, just regular black coffee in 2 plain white mugs. Then he approached Princess Veltara, who hadn't moved or acknowledged his presence. Hey, sweetie, he said casually, offering her one of the mugs. You look like you could use this. The words slipped out naturally. It was how he talked to his sister when she was stressed, how he greeted his crew when they looked tired, how humans showed care for each other. He didn't think about diplomatic protocol or formal address requirements. He just saw someone who looked like they needed a friend. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Princess Veltara's crystalline form flared bright blue, the alien equivalent of a blush spreading through her entire body. She spun around to stare at Marcus with wide, glowing eyes. And for several seconds she didn't say anything at all. Then, in perfect, unaccented English with no formal preamble or ceremonial language, she said, "Yes, darling, I believe I would." Marcus nearly dropped his coffee mug. Not only was her response in plain English, but she'd picked up his casual tone perfectly and even added her own endearment. The formal translation protocols were nowhere to be heard. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Then something incredible happened. Marcus started to laugh. It began as a surprised chuckle at the sudden change in her speech, but it grew into genuine, helpless laughter at the absurdity of the whole situation. Here he was, offering coffee to a crystalline alien princess, while calling her sweetie like she was his. Neighbor Dot, and then Princess Veltara started laughing too. Her laugh was nothing like the formal harmonic responses he'd heard during negotiations. It was musical, like crystal chimes in a gentle breeze, but it was unmistakably real laughter. She laughed at Marcus's expression, at her own surprise, at the ridiculousness of breaking every diplomatic protocol she'd ever learned. The laughter was contagious. It bubbled up between them like a spring, washing away hours of formal tension and ceremony. They laughed until they were both leaning against the observation windows for support, until Marcus had to wipe tears from his eyes, and Princess Veltara was glowing so brightly she could have lit up the entire deck. "Oh my," she said when she finally caught her breath, speaking in that same natural, unguarded English. "That felt wonderful. I haven't laughed like that in several years, actually." "You speak English," Marcus said, still grinning. "Perfect English. How long have you been able to do that?" Princess Veltara's glow shifted to something that looked embarrassed. "I've been studying human languages and culture for the past 3 years," she admitted. "Your species fascinates us. The way you interact with each other, the casual warmth, the humor. It's so different from anything in our empire. But the translator, all that formal language. Diplomatic protocol," she said, and her glow dimmed slightly. "I was required to use only formal translation systems and ceremonial address patterns. Personal language study was discouraged." Marcus felt a flash of anger at whoever had discouraged her curiosity about other cultures. "So you've been pretending not to understand English this whole time?" "Not pretending, exactly. More like following proper procedures." She paused, looking out at the stars again. "Until you called me sweetie. We don't have words like that in our language. Terms of casual affection used between strangers, or friends, or family without regard to rank or status. The concept broke through my training protocols." Marcus handed her the coffee mug, and she accepted it with obvious curiosity. "Try it," he suggested. "It's bitter, but most humans find it comforting." Princess Veltara held the mug carefully in hands that looked like they were carved from sapphire. She sniffed the coffee, then took a small sip. Her glow shifted through several colors. "It's warm," she said with surprise. "Not just in temperature, but in feeling. Like friendship in liquid form." "That's a beautiful way to put it," Marcus said, settling into one of the observation deck's chairs. "Is that how your people think? In metaphors and feelings?" "Sometimes," she admitted, sitting down across from him with movements that were somehow more natural, less rigidly perfect. "But we're not supposed to share those thoughts with other species. Too informal, too revealing." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping coffee and watching the stars. Marcus found himself studying Princess Veltara's face, trying to read expressions and features that were completely alien, but somehow becoming familiar. "Can I ask you something?" he said finally. "Do you actually enjoy all that formal diplomatic language? Because it seems exhausting." Princess Veltara was quiet for a long moment, her glow shifting through several different colors. "No," she said finally. "I hate it. It makes everything take forever. It prevents real communication, and it keeps people at a distance. But it's how things are done in our empire. It's how they've always been done. What if they didn't have to be?" She looked at him sharply. "What do you mean? What if we finish these negotiations without all the ceremony? What if we just talked to each other like people and figured out what our species need from each other?" Princess Veltara's glow flickered with what Marcus was learning to recognize as internal conflict. That would be highly irregular. Would it work better? Another pause. Then, very quietly, she said, probably. Marcus smiled and raised his coffee mug. To irregular diplomacy. Princess Veltara looked at the gesture for a moment, then raised her own mug. To calling people sweetie when they need it most. They touched mugs with a soft clink and both started laughing again. This time, Marcus knew they were laughing not just from surprise, but from relief. Finally, they could just be people talking to each other. So, Marcus said when their laughter died down, "Want to tell me what your empire actually needs from humanity? And I promise to call you sweetie if you start getting too formal again." Princess Veltara's laugh rang out across the observation deck like music. Once Princess Veltara started talking freely, Marcus discovered that the situation was far more serious than he'd realized. What he'd thought was a simple first contact meeting was actually a desperate recruitment mission. "The Zetherian Empire is dying," she said quietly. Her glow dimmed to a soft blue as she stared into her coffee. Not physically, but culturally, strategically. We become so locked into our formal protocols and ancient traditions that we can't adapt to new threats. What kind of threats? Marcus asked, leaning forward. The Vex Collective. Princess Veltara's form flickered with colors that Marcus was beginning to recognize as fear. They're a hive-mind species from the galaxy's outer rim. Completely unified, completely adaptable. They learn from every battle, every interaction, every mistake. And they're spreading toward the inner systems. Marcus felt a chill. A hive mind that learned from every encounter sounded like humanity's worst nightmare. Our military has fought them 17 times, Veltara continued. We've won some battles, but we've never won a war against them. They adapt to our tactics faster than we can change them. Our formal military doctrine, our predictable strategies, our rigid command structures. Everything that makes us efficient also makes us readable. So why come to us? Marcus asked. Humanity is just a small species. We've only been in space for a few decades. Princess Veltara's glow brightened. And for the first time since he'd met her, Marcus saw something like excitement in her crystalline features. Because your military advisors have been studying your species for 3 years. And they're fascinated by something they call chaotic warfare doctrine. The way humans fight makes no sense according to traditional galactic military theory. But it works. Marcus laughed. Chaotic warfare doctrine? Is that what they're calling it? You find this amusing? Well, we just call it thinking on your feet or improvising when plans go wrong. It's not really a doctrine. It's just being human. Princess Veltara set down her coffee mug and turned to face him fully. Marcus, in the Battle of Kepler Station, your Admiral Torres defeated a force twice her size by pretending to retreat, hiding half her fleet in an asteroid field, and then broadcasting false surrender signals while her ships came up behind the enemy. Yeah, that was pretty clever of her. No galactic military in recorded history has ever used deception in space combat. It's considered dishonorable. Marcus stared at her. You don't use tricks or bluffs or misdirection in battles. Never. It would be unthinkable. Combat must be conducted with honor, according to established protocols. But that makes you completely predictable. Exactly. Veltara's excitement was making her glow pulse with different colors. That's what my military advisors have realized. The Vex can predict our every move because we follow the same patterns every time. But humans, you're impossible to predict. Marcus started to understand. And the Vex can't adapt to something they can't predict. Our analysts have studied 47 human military encounters. In 31 of them, human commanders did things that made no logical sense according to standard tactical theory. They split their forces when they should have concentrated them. They attacked when they should have defended. They retreated from winning battles and charged into hopeless ones. And it worked? It worked brilliantly. Your species has a success rate in military encounters that's statistically impossible according to our computer models. The only explanation our strategists can come up with is that human unpredictability creates situations that no enemy can plan for. Marcus leaned back in his chair, processing this. So you want humans to help fight the Vex because we're too chaotic for them to figure us out? It's more than that, Veltara said, her voice growing serious. Our empire's been studying your species for 3 years, and the chaos goes deeper than just military tactics. Your social structures, your diplomacy, your problem-solving methods. Everything about humanity is fascinatingly unpredictable. I'm not sure if I should be flattered or insulted. Princess Veltara laughed, that crystal chime sound that was becoming familiar to Marcus. Definitely flattered. Do you know what happened tonight when you offered me coffee and called me sweetie? You blushed and started speaking English. I broke 17 different diplomatic protocols, violated my formal training, and had the first genuine conversation I've had with another being in over 2 years. Her glow shifted to warm gold, and it was wonderful. Marcus felt something click into place. That's what this is really about, isn't it? It's not just military tactics. Your whole culture is suffocating under formal rules, just like your military is locked into predictable strategies. Yes, Veltara said softly. And watching humans, the way you interact with each other, the way you solve problems, the way you just live, it's given some of us hope that there might be another way. What kind of hope? Instead of answering directly, Princess Veltara stood up and walked over to Marcus. May I show you something? It requires touching, which is highly irregular, but go ahead. She placed one crystalline hand on Marcus's forehead, and suddenly his mind was filled with images. He saw massive crystal cities where beings moved in perfect formation, speaking only in formal phrases, never touching, never laughing, never showing spontaneous affection. He saw military fleets moving in predictable patterns, using the same tactics that had been used for centuries. He saw a culture that was beautiful and efficient and slowly dying from its own perfection. Then he saw what the Zetherians had recorded about humans. He watched himself and his crew through alien eyes, saw their casual interactions, their jokes, their ability to change plans on the fly. He saw human soldiers making impossible decisions in the heat of battle. Human diplomats breaking tension with humor. Human families showing affection without protocol. He saw freedom. We need to learn this, Veltara said, removing her hand. Not just for fighting the Vex, but for saving ourselves. We need to learn how to be unpredictable, how to be spontaneous, how to be alive. Marcus felt overwhelmed by the responsibility of what she was asking. Veltara, I don't know if we can teach you how to be human. That's not really something you learn from a textbook. Her glow brightened. Then teach us the way humans learn everything else. Through experience, through making mistakes, through trying new things and seeing what works. Marcus thought about this for a moment. Then an idea started forming in his mind. It was crazy, completely against any diplomatic protocol he'd ever heard of, and absolutely perfect. Veltara, he said with a growing smile, how do you feel about learning to play poker? She tilted her head in confusion. What is poker? It's a card game. You try to figure out what other players are thinking while hiding what you're thinking. You bluff. You take risks. You make decisions with incomplete information. That sounds chaotic. Exactly. And if you really want to learn how humans think, there's no better teacher than a good poker game. Princess Veltara was quiet for a long moment. Then she started laughing again, that beautiful crystal chime sound filling the observation deck. Marcus, she said, I think this alliance is going to be even more interesting than either of our species imagined." 3 weeks later, Marcus stood in the observation deck watching the most unusual diplomatic meeting in galactic history. Around the table sat 5 human officers, Princess Veltara, and 3 other Zetherian nobles who had arrived to witness the treaty signing. They were playing poker. "I'll see your 2 energy cells and raise you 3, said Commander Rodriguez, pushing forward small glowing crystals that served as betting chips. Prince Kethmer, Veltara's military advisor, studied his cards with crystalline features that couldn't hide his concentration. "This is challenging. Your expression reveals nothing, yet you have been unsuccessful in previous hands." "That's the point," Rodriguez grinned. "Sometimes a bad poker player gets good cards." Marcus watched Veltara carefully observe the interaction. In the past 3 weeks, she had proven to be a remarkably quick learner. She'd mastered not just the rules of poker, but the subtle art of reading people and hiding her intentions. Her crystalline form had learned to control its color changes, though she still glowed bright blue when she was bluffing badly. "I believe Commander Rodriguez is attempting deception," announced Prince Kethmer formally. "However, I cannot determine the degree of deception, which causes uncertainty in my strategic calculations." "Exactly," exclaimed Lieutenant Sarah Chun, Marcus's communications officer. "That's what makes it fun. You have to make decisions without knowing everything." The 3 Zetherian nobles exchanged glances. This concept of making important decisions while uncertain was revolutionary to them. "Fold," Prince Kethmer decided, placing his cards down. "This game demonstrates why human military tactics are so effective. You operate successfully under conditions that would paralyze our strategic systems." Marcus smiled as Rodriguez revealed her cards, a terrible hand that she'd bluff successfully. The poker lessons had started as a casual way to teach Princess Veltara about human thinking, but they'd become something much more important. They'd become a bridge between 2 completely different ways of looking at the universe. "Your Highness," Marcus said to Veltara, "are you ready to review the final treaty?" She nodded, her glow shifting to the warm gold color he'd learned meant contentment. "I believe we've created something unprecedented." The treaty they'd written together was unlike anything in galactic history. Instead of the usual 1,000-page document full of subclauses and formal requirements, it was written in simple, clear language that both species could understand. It included provisions for joint military operations, cultural exchange programs, and shared research initiatives. But the most revolutionary part was Article 7, which Princess Veltara had insisted on including. It mandated that all future diplomatic meetings between their species begin with informal relationship-building activities, essentially requiring diplomats to get to know each other as people before discussing official business. "The Galactic Council is going to hate this," Rodriguez observed, reading through the treaty one final time. "Probably," Marcus agreed, "but they can't argue with the results." The results had been spectacular. In their first joint military exercise, human and Zetherian forces had developed new tactics that combined Zetherian technological superiority with human unpredictability. The Zetherians provided ships that could adapt their weapons and shields in real time, while humans provided commanders who could think 3 moves ahead of any enemy. More importantly, the cultural exchange was already changing both species. Human officers were learning Zetherian precision and discipline, while Zetherian nobles were discovering the joy of spontaneous decision-making and casual friendship. "I have a confession," Princess Veltara said quietly, interrupting Marcus's thoughts. "When I first met you, I thought humans were primitive because of your informal social structures. Now I realize we're the primitive ones. How do you figure that?" "You've learned to function as individuals while still working together as a species. We've learned to work together, but we've forgotten how to be individuals. Her glow shifted through several thoughtful colors. It takes much more sophistication to balance chaos and order than to simply eliminate chaos entirely. Prince Cathmer leaned forward with interest. The princess speaks truth. Our military strategists have spent years trying to account for every variable in combat. Humans have learned to succeed despite unknown variables. This represents a higher level of tactical evolution. Plus, added Sarah with a grin, we have way more fun doing it. The Zitherian nobles exchanged looks, and Marcus could see them struggling with this concept. Fun was not a traditional consideration in Zitherian culture. Speaking of fun, Marcus said, reaching into his jacket, I have something for you. Veltara. He pulled out a small object and handed it to her. It was a simple coffee mug with Galaxy's Best Princess, printed on the side in cheerful letters. Princess Veltara stared at the mug for a moment, her glow cycling through several colors rapidly. Then she started laughing, that crystal chime sound that Marcus had grown to love. This is highly irregular, Prince Cathmer observed with disapproval. Yes, Princess Veltara said, still laughing as she held the mug carefully. It absolutely is. And it's wonderful. 6 months later, Marcus received a transmission that made him smile from ear to ear. It was a video message from Princess Veltara, sent from the bridge of a joint human-Zitherian fleet that had just won a decisive victory against the Vex collective. In the video, she stood next to Admiral Torres, both of them grinning broadly. Behind them, human and Zitherian officers were high-fiving each other, a gesture that Princess Veltara had taught her people after learning it from Marcus's crew. Marcus, darling, she said in the message, using the casual endearment that had become her trademark. I wanted to thank you for teaching us the most important lesson in the galaxy. It turns out the secret to winning impossible battles isn't perfect strategy or superior technology. It's learning to laugh at the impossible and then doing it anyway. Admiral Torres leaned into the frame. Also, your princess here just taught a Vex hive mind how to play poker. They're still trying to figure out what happened when she bluffed them with a pair of twos. Marcus laughed as the message continued. The Vex, it turned out, couldn't adapt to human influence tactics because they were based on intuition, emotion, and spontaneous decision-making rather than logical patterns. The hive mind could predict logical responses, but it had no framework for understanding why someone would make a decision based on a feeling or a hunch. The alliance had grown beyond military cooperation. Human and Zitherian colonies were sharing cultural practices, with Zitherians learning human art forms like jazz music and improvisational comedy, while humans studied Zitherian crystal harmonics and meditation techniques. Most importantly, other galactic species were taking notice. The success of human Zitherian cooperation was inspiring other cultures to examine their own rigid traditions and consider new possibilities. At the bottom of Princess Veltara's message was a formal invitation to the first Interstellar Diplomatic Festival, where representatives from dozens of species would gather not for formal negotiations, but for what the invitation called relationship-building activities, including games, shared meals, and cultural exchange. Marcus smiled as he read the note attached to the invitation. P.S. Bring cards. The Andromedans want to learn poker, and the Centaurians are fascinated by the concept of friendly insults. This is going to be interesting. Love, your favorite alien princess. He looked out at the stars from his ship's observation deck, thinking about how much had changed since that first awkward meeting. Humanity hadn't just gained a powerful ally. They'd helped start a revolution in how the galaxy thought about cooperation, communication, and friendship. All because of a simple "hey, sweetie" and a willingness to treat a princess like a person. Marcus raised his coffee mug toward the stars in a silent toast. Sometimes the most important diplomatic breakthroughs happen not in formal meeting rooms, but in quiet moments when people just decided to be kind to each other. In the distance, he could see the lights of human and Zetherian ships flying together, their crews learning that the universe was a much more interesting place when you had friends to share it with.